This is Alex Philly speaking. So, I've played quite a bit of Shadow of War, so I think it's a good time for me to explain what it's like compared to the previous game and what I like about it and what could be improved. To start with, the map's larger, which is good. The original game had two regions, one of which was a bit larger than the other one. These new regions are not only bigger, but they're quite diverse. You've got a snowy region, you've got a besieged city, you've got a cave, mountain, a volcano, lava land, and you've got a more grassy, Aztec-y kind of thing. With each of the regions, you've got different side missions and side objectives. Not only that, but there's also fortresses. Fortresses are a good climax to each separate section of the game, and then it also becomes a main part of the end game, where you do a lot of fortress defences and then you have to retake the fortresses that you lose. A good thing about this game, compared to the previous game, it's a more diverse cast of both the orcs and the non-orc characters. In terms of the orcs, you've got way more in terms of the different tribes, different classes, and that's pretty good. The speeches that the orcs give are as fun as the first game, and some of them are just even funnier and even more crazy in this game. You got some really interesting new classes and characters. In terms of the human characters, you've got some of the ones like Idril, Baranor, Castamir. You've got other characters like Shelob, Eltariel, Karnan. You've got Bruce, who's this brilliant orc guy. There's also a few other characters. There's a few other characters that come back. One thing I like about the orcs is that when you fight them and something happens to them, their title changes as well. So say if you make someone mad, the title can change to something like the Deranged or the Unashamed, things like that. So it's interesting because their title reflects what's happened to them. Another new mechanic which is quite good is the Blood Brother. So if an orc has a strong relationship with another orc, if you kill them, obviously they're going to come after you and be angry. And if you try and pit them against each other, they're going to rebel against you, which is pretty cool. Getting betrayed by your own orcs in this game does make it more interesting. In the first game, you could literally do anything with the dominated ones and they couldn't do anything, but here you've got to be careful. You've got to treat them like fairly nicely, and if you start misbehaving, then they'll start to betray you. Even if you get humiliated by like another orc, or if you keep dying all the time, they will rebel. I think the story missions, they're quite good in a way, but the story missions are quite short really, and I know it's part of like a huge narrative, but they're all very bite-sized. Do this objective, do this thing, nice, move on. But I kind of wish it had been like more, not necessarily longer, but a bit more chained together. You do all these little side quests here and there, and then some of them are story related, some of them aren't. I mean, it's one of the things they could possibly try and improve if they do DLC or other things like that. The thing about the story collectibles is I quite liked collecting them. It was quite nice, but at the same time, I don't think I'd want to do it again. It is a bit too tedious. Go all the way over the map and get these things, get this stuff, and it's like, I don't know, it's kind of the same with a lot of these games, the sandbox games nowadays. You have to go around the map and scour all these little things. It's like, it doesn't really make that much of a difference to the whole game. It's just a little bit of flavour, plus it gets you seeing some of the cool bits of the maps. So I thought the item and loot progression in this game is much better than the previous game where you had the runes. It's more fun when you get like some super cool legendary dagger, and then you can upgrade it and do all these little quests to level up and things like that. Plus each of the items definitely helps you in different ways depending on which of the elements you want to try and use. That's another cool thing. You've got the fire, poison, got curse damage, and you've got frost as well. I think that all plays well into the system. In terms of the upgrades, you've got some interesting ones this time. I think some of them, obviously they had to scale it a bit back compared to the first game where you just basically could do anything. But here you actually choose, so you can specialise based on what you want to do. Whether you want to terrify the orcs, or whether you want to get might, or whether you want to do some cool mid-air combat, that kind of stuff. So it depends what you want to do really. You can only have a certain combination of things. It takes you a while to get all the skill points, so they can drag on a bit. I think some of the quests, they were okay, but it was a bit too much padding out. It's like, go to this location, the enemy's not here. Go to this other location. It just kind of drags on a bit in the end. That kind of detracts from the whole story perspective. I think they could have done a bit more in terms of, in the first game for example, they had some quests where you could say like dominate all the war chiefs or do this thing. But here, they don't really get you to do much of that, which is a bit of a shame. It would be kind of nice if they did a bit more of that. Whereas instead there's a lot of the little story missions, but they're all quite segmented and a bit, I don't know, not quite perfect. Right, the end game, which is Act 4, which is the Shadow Wars, I'm going to say it's a bit drawn out. It feels like you're doing a lot of the same things every time. First few stages are pretty easy, and in terms of the later ones, it does like get a little bit harder later on, but it's still... The problem is you've only got 4 fortresses to defend, and in each of the later stages you have to defend 2 or 3 at a time, and it just takes a bit too long. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I know they want to drag out the end game and get people to play more and more, but I don't know, it's the fact that it's always happening as well. It's like every time you finish the raid, there's like another one straight after. Whereas if there was a bit of time between each one, then you could kind of like appreciate the passage of time a bit more. Here it's just like, oh, Fort 1 is under attack, oh, Fort 2 is under attack. And it just kind of repeats, and it's not great. And I know people are wanting like an endless mode with that, but oh god, that's just going to get so depressing if you do like about 100 or 200 of these things. I don't know, well, we'll have to see what they do. One of the other problems with the game is when you do the fortress defense or assaults, when the story's finished, you don't have that kind of army dialogue, and that was like one of the best bits, was you hear the Overlord's speech, you get your own guys to like speak back, and then when you capture the fort, you've got like Talion and Celebrimbor like bragging and everything, and you kind of miss that later on. It's a bit of a shame. Later on though, you do have the online fort attacks, and you do have the Overlord speeches on there, which is pretty cool, and you can have some really like strong Overlord characters that some guys have just put on their fortress just in case you come. And you can still do the vendetta missions in this game, which is pretty good, and you can see who's avenged you because you both get the rewards for it, which is pretty cool. Right, question 1. One of the questions is, was there too much hype behind this game? I don't know, I guess in some ways obviously there is compared to the first game, which was kind of like the first game was a bit of a surprise to a lot of people, whereas with this one you had like the trailer to build it up, you had all the live streams they did. I think in fact the live streams make the game seem really fun, and it is really fun, but I think the live streams made it even more fun with some of like the funny hosts they had, and they had some pretty cool things. In terms of the difficulty, I think adding extra difficulties was the right thing to do. I just stuck with the normal difficulty. To me it just feels right. I know you've got a lot of last chance attempts on that one, but there's always orcs that have the Humiliator or the no chance perks, so they'll always just kill you in one hit anyway regardless. And I think the enemies, some of them seem tough enough, they adapt quickly to what you're trying to do, so they can quickly become kind of immune to most things, which is nice. I think the Minas Morgul area needs a bit of improvement. It's a bit of a pain for 2 reasons. Most of the orc captains you have, they have the Iron Will, and that means you can't recruit them easily, so you'll have to shame them and try and get other ones. It makes it a bit harder, but then the other thing is, even if you have the orcs, you can't even capture the fortress, so what's the point? I mean, the only reason to go there is for missions or to try and get the Pit Fighter achievement, and it's a bit of a shame compared to what the area is like, because it is a cool place, and obviously for the story it was a major place. But yeah, it's a bit of a shame. They need to do something with that, I think. In terms of the final story mission in the game, it does feel epic. You've got a big orc fight, there's other fights as well. I think it's better than the final fight in the first game. There's no kind of big QTE thing you have to do in this game. There's some parts of the final boss which have tactical elements which are cool. And I think some of the battles, like against the ring race and things, they were pretty cool, and against some of the other bosses, they're cool. I'd probably give this game an 8 out of 10. It's pretty good in a lot of parts. Some bits are maybe not quite as good, some bits need a bit of improvement, but hopefully with a few patches and a few different things, the game will be a bit better. But overall, it's fun. I do keep coming back to it. I'll probably play it for quite a while. I'll do quite a few more of these videos, and hopefully some cool things will happen, because I had some cool stories in this game. One story I had with Gash the Gut Ripper was he was like this really cool orc that I had. I recruited him, we went on a few missions together, he was my bodyguard, and then he saved my life at one point, which was pretty amazing. And then one time we were fighting against this captain, and this captain had this huge long chain weapon. So with this chain weapon, he gets my captain, rips his head off with the chain, grabs it, and that was the death scene of Gash, and I was shocked. I couldn't believe he'd been killed, because he was this cool guy, he saved my life and all these things, but man, that moment was amazing. And then, yeah, there was another cool story I had in the game, which is when I was in the Nurnen region. It was after In fact, I can't remember if it was quite after I had the fight with Bruce to do the domination quest. Actually, I don't think it was. I think it was before the Bruce quest. But I was against a guy. It was a level 25 orc called Gal the Alchemist. He was a machine assassin of epic quality. So he had already killed me once. So I'd come to avenge myself. So I did manage to cut him in half, which was cool. And then, all of a sudden, there was this guy called Cougar Firebrand, this level 13 fiery machine tank orc. And what he was, is he was an Avenger, so he was avenging the death of his blood brother. Unfortunately, I lost the videos of that guy, but he basically came back about 4 or 5 times, and he was pretty persistent. I was getting to a stage where I was thinking, wow, that guy's like always going to come back, because he was just haunting me for ages and ages. And that was a fun moment. In terms of bugs, I've seen a few little bugs here and there. There was like an invisible wall I couldn't go over. There were some other bugs. There's some text bugs, like there's one guy, it's a guy called Borgu, who I made into a war chief. It says in brackets invalid string ID. So there's things like that. But overall, I think the game does a pretty good job of doing things. So that's about it in terms of my thoughts for now. Probably when I finish the game and when I play a few more hours, I'll probably go into it a bit more and explain a few more things. But I think that gives you a good idea of what my impressions of the game are, kind of what you can expect to some degree. But yeah, it's better than the last game, but not quite perfect, but it's still pretty fun for what it is.